Good morning, folks. We are 2 days out. 2 days out from the start of the NFL season. Thursday Night Football, Lions versus Kansas City. I can't remember exactly where the game is, if it's in Arrowhead or if it's in Detroit, but nevertheless, football is back, and we're going to be rolling out my 2023-2024 NFL Power Ranking. So last year, I did something I normally don't do, which I guess it's not. It wasn't too much of a. I don't even know how to explain it. I was doing the power rankings every single week, and I was never really accustomed to putting out that much content. I was doing the power rankings. I was doing podcasts on top of that and other content, streaming, and I probably put my best effort forward, grinding on the content. I'm hoping that to the best of my ability, I could put out more content consistently this year. A lot of it'll be streaming with like gaming and stuff like that, but or for the rest of the year. But I'm going to keep up on everything that's going on with football. We're going to do quarterly podcasts. We're going to do the power rankings also quarterly. The guys and I will break everything down. Once you get like halfway through the season, you kind of know where teams fit. And I started being like, oh, this team's in rebuild mode. This team's doing this team's doing that. And the power rankings were kind of stagnant, at least the lower half, and even some of the upper half. So I think I'm going to do them quarterly. I think that would actually be able to round out the content a lot better. It'd be a lot more, thicker instead of talking about similar things for each team every week. And then as we get to the end of the season, I will basically just create a playoff bracket and have my or make the show the playoff bracket and show my predictions on how far I think teams are going to go. Nevertheless, here are my power rankings. I've been working on these for a while. Just finished them up the other night, and I decided this is the version that I'm going to roll with after a lot of contemplation. So, getting my notes ready. Alrighty, 2023, 2024 NFL Power Rankings. Start number 32, the Arizona Cardinals. So this one's fairly easy. The Arizona Cardinals at 32. Their biggest strength is quarterback playmaker and Kyler Murray. Whenever he comes back, I think he's going to be out for 4 more weeks, but he'll be back. Biggest weakness is their overall talent. You can make an argument that by far this is hands down the worst roster in the league. Kyler Murray is their best player, which he's a very talented player, but outside of that, there's not a lot of talent on this team. Best offensive player is Kyler Murray. Best defensive player is Budda Baker. The X factor is Kyler Murray. This team won't be competitive unless he comes back and puts his best foot forward and really works hard to be the best player he can be. And I mean competitive as in like maybe win a couple more games than I think they're projected to win. This team's in full blown rebuild. Rumors that they're going to go with Caleb Williams next year and do to Josh Rosen what they did with Kyler Murray and draft a quarterback. Not back to back, but it is pretty funny. He's only like 26 or 27 years old. But personally, if everything's gone on with him and stuff like that, at this point at his age, I would probably, if there was a way to move off not losing a lot of money on his contract, I probably wouldn't draft Caleb Williams. Arizona 32. Houston Texans, their biggest strength is their secondary. I actually really love their secondary a lot. Derek Stingley Jr., Jalen Petrie. They brought in Jimmy Ward. I think this defense might surprise people and be a little bit better. They brought in Sheldon Rankins to bolster up front, although he's older, he's a veteran. I think this defense could actually show a little bit of promise. Last year, Houston actually played competitive in a lot of games they probably shouldn't have. Their biggest weakness, though, is their front seven. Although they brought Sheldon Rankins in, their front seven's not that great. Their linebackers really aren't all that great. Don't have really good pass rush pieces, and even with Sheldon Rankins, their interior defensive line's not that good. There's not a lot of talent there. They drafted, should I forget the young man's name? The kid from Georgia there. Bear with me. I just woke up. I'm trying to bang this out so I can do my Starfield playthroughs. Here we go. Shout out to R Lads with all my depth chart stuff. I use R Lads, in my opinion, the best place to find current up to date depth charts. Will Anderson Jr. Smaller framed, a little bit lighter of a defensive end, but an actual absolute athletic freaking bulldozer. He's a dog. He's gonna wreak havoc. He's better in the run game than people give him credit for, and off the edge, he's an absolute monster. Like in college, played in the SEC, bowling offensive tackles over at only 248 pounds. I'd like to see him put a little more muscle size on, but as long as it doesn't stop his speed. Jimmy Ward's obviously the best defensive player. Dameon Pierce, best offensive player. The X factor is going to be C.G. Stroud. So when I talk about these X factors, sometimes the X factor is going to be the player that really pushes the envelope. But for some of these teams, the X factor is going to be, can a new player or a young player be the player that you think that player could be to put that team over the top? Nevertheless, Floor, love the coaching hire. I do like it. I value the offensive coaches in the Value League, but I do think it was a good pick. They picked a smart player in D'Amico Ryans, veteran, played for the franchise. Floor, 5 wins. Ceiling, competitive 7-10 in a bad division. So, Houston, 31. Indianapolis Colts, to me, the Indianapolis Colts are weird teams. They got talent at different spots, but they haven't been able to get the quarterback right. They've had a lot of injuries. Their biggest strength is their defense. Their overall defense, pretty solid unit, but their offense just really isn't good enough. Even this, so many teams are good on both sides of the ball. So many teams are so good on offense now. Even if there's some teams that don't have talent at a lot of positions on offense and still manage to be pretty productive offensively. So if you're just rolling in and your best player's hurt, like Jonathan Taylor, or not playing like Jonathan Taylor, and all you could do is play some semblance of defense, in this league you're going to struggle. I don't think this team's going to be that good. Biggest weakness is their offensive line. I know they have Quentin Nelson. It's only one player. The offensive line's looking pretty big. Jonathan Taylor, I think he is healthy, but he's got contract dispute stuff going on. If he comes back, I think he'll pick up right where he left off. Their best defender, linebacker Shaq Leonard, can come up, play the run, really good in coverage. And the X factor is going to be Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is an interesting prospect to me because the Colts are rolling the dice and going the Josh Allen route. A guy that didn't, in my opinion, as a pure quarterback, didn't show that he deserved to be drafted over guys like Will Levis and Hendon Hooker. But they're going with the height, weight, speed, skill set. Dude only played 13 games in college. Although he has a howitzer for an arm and has tons of arm talent, his ball placement's bad, his accuracy's bad. Just hasn't played a lot of football. Mechanics are bad. But they're probably, when Taylor comes back, they're probably going to line up and do a lot of running with him. He's an absolute freak athlete. He was like one of the most athletic quarterbacks to ever grace the combine. I actually think regardless, this team could be really bad. I put their floor at 5-12. Ceiling at 7-10 because the division's not that good, but I lean more towards 5-12. Indianapolis at 30. So the Los Angeles Rams, for me, the Los Angeles Rams, although they play in a decent division right now with Seattle and the 49ers being really good, they have a wide variance because they still are good at a lot of the positions that matter. Their biggest strength is their front seven. Although I don't think their linebackers are all that great. I say front seven because they play together pretty cohesively as a unit. They also have good pass rushers. They have, Aaron Donald, who's their best defensive player. They still have Cooper Kupp, who keeps dealing with a hamstring injury, but he's supposedly ready to play. The X factor is going to be Matt Stafford. Can Matt Stafford come back and be the player that he always is and be healthy? That would be huge for them. I think their floor is going to be 5-12. I think their ceiling is going to be 9-8. This is arguably, in my opinion, the second worst roster in the league. But we've seen teams that, if they're good at the right spots, regardless of overall roster depth and skill set, they can still win a lot of football games. That being said, in that division, I put their ceiling at 9-8. I doubt they get to 9-8. It would need them. It would have their offensive line would have to be healthy. Cup would have to be fully healthy. Stafford had to be fully healthy, and then they would have to be they'd have to be middle package of the defense just to get to that 9-8. I don't see it happening. Los Angeles, number 29. So number 8, the Tennessee Titans. So this is a tough one for me because I actually do like what the Titans are building. I like their young players on defense. I like the signing of DeAndre Hopkins. I like them going out and getting Will Levis. There's a lot of things that I like that are going on with this Titans team in a bad division. Their biggest strength is the ground game. Biggest weakness is their secondary. Love Mike Vrabel. I thought about putting that as like one of their biggest strengths. He's a fantastic coach. Similar to, I feel like, one of these coaches that gets the most out of players, gets the most and galvanizes and put them in position to succeed, kind of like how Mike Tomlin does. Obviously the accolades between those two guys, the rap sheets just night and day. Tomlin's a championship winning coach. But nevertheless, I like Mike Vrabel. Best offensive player, Derrick Henry. Best defensive player, Justin Simmons. X Factor, DeAndre Hopkins. He was on pace for 1,400 yards last year and 11 touchdowns. If DeAndre Hopkins can be the player that he's been his whole career, 31 years old, with Treylon Burks on the other side of him, that would ease a lot for Treylon Burks, who has a lot of upside and potential. If the offensive line can be decent, with Mike Vrabel coaching the defense up, I think this team could be very competitive in their division and maybe get 9 wins, but their floor is going to be 6-11. So they're interesting to me. I do like what this team's building. Tennessee Titans at 28. 27, the Las Vegas Raiders. So some of these teams that are in this area right here could all be like swatched around. The reason why I put Las Vegas at 27, at 27 over, sorry about that, 27 over, now you know who's next, 27 over some of these other teams behind them is because they're a little bit better at the positions that matter. So their biggest strength is their ground game. Their biggest weakness is their back seven. Their linebackers are not good and they're inefficient, just really bad at taking on blocks and, being where they need to be to actually stop run plays at the point of attack. I do like what they're building on their back seven, but they're really young. There's not a lot of depth. It's a defensive back core that has upside, but it's building. The best offensive players, Devontae Adams, which is huge. The best defensive player is Max Crosby, who's really good. The X factor for me is Josh Jacobs. He's only had one really good year. His other quote-unquote really good year is a year that 15 other running backs have in the league every year, rush for a little over 1,000 yards. They're going to need all hands on deck, everyone to be healthy to be competitive in a tough division. They got Jimmy Garoppolo, who I've shit on a lot in the past. He's definitely not an above-average quarterback. He's probably an average quarterback. Like, for me, it's like average, above average, then good. He's probably somewhere between average and above average. He can do he knows how to run Josh McDaniels' system, and he's got enough around him between Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, Hunter Renfrow, a solid left tackle. They're good at some positions, especially on offense, to make it so they can be competitive and get more wins than the roster indicates. But still, the Raiders, in my opinion, roster-wise, are one of the worst teams in the league. I don't see them being really all that good this year, especially in a tough division. Las Vegas, 27. And as you've seen, number 26, the Atlanta Falcons. So a lot of people are really high on the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not as high on the Atlanta Falcons as people are. There's always philosophies that get thrown around on how to build a team. And if anyone's listened or watched any of my content, they know that I'm not one of these dudes that values running backs the way some people do, or anyone over the age of 40 does. Even most people that grew up watching football, me, think that running's the fucking most important aspect in today's league, and it's just really not. And even if you want to run the football, you don't got to spend a lot of money at the running back position, but that's besides the point. Atlanta's one of the worst franchises in the history of sports, in my opinion, because not only have they sucked over the years at building teams, but they've also built teams, like the times they build teams, People act like they're so good, and they fucking built this team in Atlanta, one of the best teams offensively we've ever seen. And they still friggin' choked in the Super Bowl. And just the direction that they go in with how they build their personnel and stuff. Arthur Smith, I like him. He's a good coach. But, they could have made moves or maybe traded up or gone after one of these quarterbacks or whatnot, and they decided to just take another running back after they had a 1,000-yard rushing running back. Now, I get it. I really liked Tyler Algier last year. Bijan Robinson's obviously a night and day upgrade. There's a good chance Bijan Robinson's going to be a star. Last year, that offensive line was top 5 in run blocking. He looked fantastic in the preseason against number ones. They're going to slot him in. He's going to be well over 1,000 yards this year. He's going to get in the end zone a lot. He's got ability to catch the ball. He's got that upside. But we talked about it yesterday on the podcast. I don't know what this team thinks they're trying to do with the direction of this team, because they're in a division where if you got right now, they have enough on offense where if you went and got the right guy at quarterback, whether it was free agency or through the draft or however you want to do it, or a trade, they could have easily gone from just being a 7-10 team to being a 10-7 team, 11-6 team, because they have enough on offense. They have enough weapons on offense. The offensive line's good enough. All you need is a quarterback that pushes the envelope, that could throw darts. Command offense, throw that shit down the fucking field. Coupled with the run game, this team has an opportunity right now to possibly leap everyone else. How they weren't in the sweepstakes for Lamar Jackson, I will never understand, because he fits the scheme. And that would have instantly made them a 10-win team, no matter how bad this team plays defense. And they will play defense this bad again. Get a little long-winded here about Atlanta. They just drive me nuts because I just can never understand what they're trying to do. Biggest strength is their ground game. Biggest weakness is their defense. Best offensive player is left guard Chris Lindstrom. Best defensive player now is Jesse Bates, who they picked up in free agency. The X factor is going to be Bijan Robinson. I really think he's going to be really good. Floor 7-10, just like last year, because almost all these teams finish 7-10 or 9-8, and the ceiling will be 9-8. Because even though this division's bad, all the teams in this division have improved a little bit, and they're all probably going to float around this 7-10, 9-8 figure again, and it's going to be whoever sucks the least wins the division. Defensively, they added Jesse Bates, who's can make an argument he's one of the best safeties in the league. That's going to help them. But the rest of their pickups, for me, it was just patchwork, like a Band-Aid. They picked up David Onyemata, who's all right. Calais Campbell, who's like fucking 45 years old. They picked up Bud Dupree, who's not good. He's overrated. In linebacker, their best addition, in my opinion, they picked up on defense besides Jesse Bates is Caden Ellis, who is kind of a gadget linebacker. He can do a little bit of everything. He can man the middle. You can put him out on the edge. He can cover. So that'll be good for them because they need help at that spot. But this team's going to be about as good as they were last year, even with Bijan Robinson. Going back to the philosophy thing real quick. As much as I don't value running backs as much as a lot of people, I think if you're the reason why it confuses me is I think if you're a really, really, really good team and all you need is a running back, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking one in the first or second round, more so the first round. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If that's all you need is that piece, you think that's the piece to get you over the hump, go for it because they're on a rookie contract. You can get out of it after 4 years, know when to sell high, trade them, whatever you want to do. I just don't understand. This team just doubled down on running the football when last year they were one of the best rushing teams. They couldn't even win their own division. Atlanta at 26. '25 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So for me, this is another team that could have a wide range of variance, and it's one of the more interesting teams to me. Their biggest strength are their wide receivers. Their biggest weakness is their offensive line health. They have good offensive line pieces, but all of them are banged up all the time, and I'm pretty sure their center just went down again. Best offensive player, Mike Evans. Best defensive player, Levante David, the old head. Love Levante David. X factor is going to be Baker Mayfield for the simple fact that Baker Mayfield has shown in the past that he has flashes. He has really good arm talent, but he hasn't been as accurate as everyone thought he was going to be coming from college into the pros. I don't know if it's system. sometimes he plays really well and has good vision and has really good ball placement and accuracy. He's just not consistent enough. There's games where he looks great, then there's games where he looks bad. There's drives where he looks great, then there's drives where he looks bad. This team actually has one of the more talented rosters in the NFC. Honestly, they're really good. They're really good and deep at corner or at corner and at wide receiver. They got good safeties. They got good linebacker. Well, they got one good linebacker, one who's just athletic and inefficient. Their front seven's really good. Tons of players all over the front seven. Defensively, this team, if it stays healthy, is going to be really competitive defensively. They have Rachaad White, who's going to be really good for them at running back, had 900 yards last year, splitting carries. The biggest thing is going to be this offensive line's health and how Baker Mayfield plays. They could easily win this division again. And maybe win a game more if Baker Mayfield plays well and if everyone stays healthy. But it's going to be tough. This is going to be a little rat race here in this division. Floor 6-11, ceiling 10-7. Tampa Bay Buccaneers 25. All right, so the New England Patriots. I think people are probably surprised to see them a little up higher in the list, but their biggest strength is their defense. Their biggest weakness is their wide receivers. Best offensive player is Ramondre Stevenson. Best defensive player is Matthew Judon. The X factor is going to be Ramondre Stevenson, and I say that because can Ramondre Stevenson stay fully healthy and get this team block enough with the defense and plus what he's actually capable of? I think this team could be competitive. They're going to finish last in the division, but I think they could be pretty competitive. Ramondre Stevenson, in all facets of the game at running back, is really damn good. I'm wondering if he's going to have one of these seasons where he just goes off. Like, he has the capability of being like a 1,000-yard catch guy. This is just my opinion. 1,000-yard receiving guy, 1,000-yard running back guy. But nevertheless, the Patriots are just going to be very, very competitive. They're going to be well coached. Floor in a good division, their floor is 7-10, possibly 9-8. I lean more 7-10. New England 24. Chicago Bears moving up. I want to say last year I had them at like 28 or 29 to start the season. Now they're up here at 23. I am a little more lukewarm on the Chicago Bears than everyone else. A lot of people see their additions, and everyone's like, oh, like fucking running to like anoint them the champions of their division. Do I think they could possibly have one of the better offenses in their division? Absolutely. I've seen spots that have the Chicago Bears all the way up in the teens. I don't agree with that because the team is really, really young, and there's spots where they're just still not good or unproven. Their biggest strength last year was their run game. It'll probably be their strength this year with Justin Fields. And I like Khalil Herbert a lot. I think he's going to take a big step. Biggest weakness is the trenches. Defensively, their defensive line is not good at all. They added some pieces there. Like Andrew Billings and DeMarcus Walker, but those guys really aren't all that good. They added Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards to the linebacker core. Both good linebackers, but both have their weaknesses. I think they overpaid for both linebackers, especially Tremaine Edmonds. I love Tremaine Edmonds a lot, but I think he's the type of linebacker who needs to play in a scheme where he doesn't have to do a bulk of the legwork up front. This is a guy that, is really good side to side, really good in coverage, can tackle, but he's not that strong at the point of attack. And I don't know how many Bills games I watch where, and I don't know if it's because he's 6'5", 6'6", the low man usually wins, but you see him playing very, very high at the point of attack when he's trying to take on blocks, when he's riding and ripping down the line to make tackles, and even when he tries to tackle people. TJ Edwards, he's good. He's a good linebacker, not really great. They paid him a decent clip. They added Darnell Wright at tackle, and they also added Nate Davis, which is going to help them a lot. But it's, this offensive line is still going to be unproven. We're really good at run blocking last year, but more importantly, can they pass block for their franchise quarterback? Best offensive player, Justin Fields. Best defensive player, cornerback, Jalen Johnson. X factor is going to be Justin Fields. I thought he played well considering what they had last year as a passer. He still is a little bit inconsistent, makes bad decisions with football. But they added DJ Moore. They added the additions to the offensive line. They're going to get out and play a little more balance this year. They still got Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. I think the floor for this team is 5-12, but I think in a division like this where all the teams, some teams got worse, some teams got better, the ceiling for this team could be 10-7. And that's a wide gap, a 5-game gap. I expect them to be last to be more towards fifth because I just think this team still needs time to gel. It's a young football team. Chicago at 23. 22, the New Orleans Saints. Their biggest strength is their defense, even though they do have some holes on defense, like their interior D line needs a little work. Biggest weaknesses, their offensive line. They lost their left tackle. Andrus Pete's getting a little long in the tooth. They're okay at center and right guard, and then they're really good at right tackle. I just think that, honestly, I don't really think this team has a lot of weaknesses. It's just, can it all come together? Best offensive player is Alvin Kamara. He's going to miss 3 weeks, but he'll be back, and I assume he's going to be as good as he usually is. Catching the ball out of the backfield. Best defensive player is Marshawn Lattimore. The X factor is going to be Alvin Kamara. Can he play to the best of his ability? And then Derek Carr. This team is a team that is another team that has a really talented team. They got good pass catchers. But can Derek Carr? He's always been good. He's never been anything more than good, and at times he's very inconsistent, especially in big moments. I feel like this team should probably be the favorite to win this division, considering the level of quarterback they brought in and the level of the team. But we are only talking about this year, but I think that after this year, they got a lot of older players. They got a lot of players who can go to free agency. This might be their last effort for a little bit here to actually make a little playoff run, because I can't see this team down the road, once they drop all their casualties and stuff like that, being all that good. They're going to be in rebuild mode in a year or two, full rebuild mode. Some people would say they're in rebuild mode now, but their roster doesn't indicate that. They just need the right guy behind center. Saints at 22. And here's my dark horse to win the division, the 2020 or the number 21 Carolina Panthers. What the fuck am I talking about? Carolina Panthers' biggest strength is their projected defense. I love this defense. Derek Brown up there in the middle, Burns, Yetur Gross-Matos, Shaq Lawson, underrated Freddie Luvu. They're 4 deep at corner. They're really good at safety. They're 4 deep at safety. Their safeties are really good. At corner they got J.C. Horn. They got who's a stud. They got Jeremy Chin at free safety. Their biggest weakness is going to be their offensive line. It's mostly their interior offensive line, because their best offensive player is Ike Ekwonu. He was really good last year. They're also Taylor Morton's their right tackle, who's really good. Their best defensive player is Brian Burns. The X factor is going to be Bryce Young. Personally, I thought Bryce Young looked good in the preseason besides the first game, because the offensive line let him get beat up. The only way in my opinion, Bryce Young has all the talent in the world, the only deficiency that he has is his size. Sorry about that. His size and probably the velocity is to which he throws it, and that probably could be a side effect of his frame. He's only like 5'10", 205 pounds. I like to see him put a little more muscle on, because he has all the tools in the world: accuracy, anticipatory throwing, ball placement. He can read the whole entire field. He has great poise in the pocket, makes good decisions with the football. And I like their skill position players. They're deep with the skill position players. They got at running back, they brought Miles Sanders over. They got Chuba Hubbard. They got Javon Blackshear. They have Adam Thielen, who against the number ones against every team in preseason was fucking dicing people up and getting in the end zone at fucking 31 years old. The Great White Hope. They got DJ Chark, who can get downfield, do some things, stretch the field. They got Terrence Marshall Jr., who, if he can stay healthy, I feel like has a lot of upside as a really good slot player. And then they got Jonathan Mingo, who's a really athletic, do-it-all wide receiver. Can do a little bit of everything. Really good after the catch. I really, really think that this team has a chance to win this division this year. I have their floor at 6-11, ceiling at 10-7, but you could fucking go 8-9 in this division, just like the Buccaneers did last year, and win this fucking thing. I would love to see Bryce Young come out here and prove everyone wrong. Take this franchise by the reins. Take this team and showcase that the young talent on this team is going in the right direction. Carolina 21. Denver Broncos. Biggest strength is their overall defense. Biggest weakness is their O-line. Best offensive player is Russell Wilson. Best defensive player is Patrick Surtain Jr. The X factor for me for this team is Jerry Jeudy and Sean Payton. So Sean Payton coming over, it's very interesting to me. Sean Payton's a really good coach. He's a good offensive coach. I also think he knows what he's doing with defensive personnel. And in total leading and galvanizing a team, he's fantastic. Just a brilliant football mind. That's immediately going to make this football team a team that's got a really good roster a lot better immediately. I think he's going to make Russell Wilson better immediately. And I think he's smart enough to know that Russell Wilson doesn't fit into a traditional Sean Payton scheme. He's not the guy that, is the super accurate guy that's going to be like pip, pinging it around all over the place like Drew Brees. With Russell Wilson and this football team, you got to play balanced football and you got to take shots down the field with Russ. He's one of the best deep ball throwers that's ever played in the NFL. So they're going to run the football and they're going to play command and control, and then take bombs and shots down the field. They have the personnel to take the bombs and shots down the field. They got Jerry Jeudy, I love Jerry Jeudy as my favorite wide receiver coming out of that draft. In my opinion, he's one of the best route runners in the whole entire league. Can he stay healthy and be the guy? That's going to be huge. Floor for this team in a tough division is 7-10. If everything breaks the right way, they get lucky, I could see this team winning 10 and 11 games. Denver Broncos 20. 19, the Green Bay Packers. Their biggest strength is their defense, which their defense, in my opinion, if it stays healthy, is going to be really, really good this year. They're just deep at all levels. Biggest weakness is their pass catchers. Now, I say that their weakness is their pass catchers. The young pass catchers on the team have upside. But they got to go out there and show it. They weren't really all that good with an elite quarterback last year. Kids blowing assignments, making bad plays on balls, offensive pass interference. They're just a young core of wide receivers. The best offensive player is David Bakhtiari. The best defensive player is one of the best players in the league, Jaire Alexander. X factor is going to be how well does Jordan Love play, and can Christian Watson take the next step and be the number one in that offense. Christian Watson's a guy who's got the height, weight, speed thing going on. Got to get a little better at the route running, lacks a little bit of polish, and he's got to make sure he catches everything. But he had 6 or 7 touchdowns last year, albeit a big bulk of those came in 2 back-to-back weeks. The floor for this team is 6-11, but I can see this team can be in a competitive 10-7 because from what I've been watching of Jordan Love, I actually don't think Jordan Love's going to be that bad. Do the Packers really have the luck of having, back-to-back-to-back elite quarterbacks? I highly doubt it. But in terms of, for a kid that's been sitting and been a backup, to come in now after sitting behind one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, you could be in a worse position than having Jordan Love as your quarterback. I actually think this team's going to surprise people and be competitive. Green Bay Packers, 19. Number 18, the Washington Commanders. So I'm high on the Washington Commanders this year, and this was tough for me to slot them. I slotted them a little bit based off projection, based off what they were last year, based off their strikes on their roster. I really like the Washington Commanders this year. Now they play in a tough division. It's hard to get wins. So it's one of those things where they have to prove. The reason why they're not higher is they got to prove me right. Biggest strength is their defense. Their front seven's gnarly. Their defensive backs are gnarly. They got really good safeties. They got depth at safety. They drafted at corner. I got my notes here. I forgot what corner they take. What corner they took. Oh, okay. So they picked up Emmanuel Forbes, who was really, really, really good in college. They also picked up Braden Daniels and Ricky Stromberg for the defensive line or the offensive line, which will help the offensive line. Their biggest weakness is their offensive line. In my opinion, that's their only weakness on their team is their offensive line. Best offensive player is Terry McLaurin. Best defensive player is Jonathan Allen at D tackle. Their X factors are Chase Young and Sam Howell. Chase Young has all the talent in the world. He's an absolute physical freak. He's an animal. But can he stay fucking healthy? And I feel bad. It drives me nuts to see a dude that's so talented just be plagued with injuries every single year. If he could fully stay healthy and have a resurgence and be like a comeback player type candidate this year, this defense is going to be even that much better. And personally, You fucking heard it here first. I've been saying it. If you listen to my content, in 2000, as a 2020, 2021, when Sam Howell came out, I said he was the best quarterback in that draft class. And every opportunity, whether it's preseason or the regular season, he's had opportunities. He's looked fantastic, whether he's running the football or throwing the football. He's got arm talents for days, velocity, keeps his eyes down the field, anticipatory throwing, dude throws darts. Then he's got rushing upside. Serious rushing upside. Floor for this team is 7-10. Ceiling is 10-7. I'm putting my stamp down. I got your back, Sam Howell. I think he's a really good prospect, and I think he's going to prove me right and a lot of people fucking wrong this year. Got Washington 18. Number 17, the New York Giants. Biggest strength, run game. Biggest weakness, wide receiver. Best offensive player, Andrew Thomas, left tackle. I get it. I know everyone's like Saquon Barkley, but I value a left tackle more than I value any running back. And albeit Andrew Thomas is a premier elite tackle in this league, so he's more valuable. Best defensive player is Dexter Lawrence, and the X factor is going to be Saquon Barkley. And the reason why I say that is this offense is designed and built around now Saquon Barkley. I think their offense is going to be just about as good as it was last year, which wasn't really all that good. I'm interested to see if the reason why Saquon Barkley is the X factor is because he's got to have another year similar to his rookie year for this team to reach its capacity, as well as Daniel Jones needs to be better. I didn't know if I wanted to put Daniel Jones as the X factor or Saquon Barkley as the X factor. I probably should have put Daniel Jones as the X factor because he's got to take that next step. They have additions to the defense, additions to the offensive line. Trying to find my notes on the Giants. A lot of places have the Giants probably like 4 or 5 spots higher than me. Personally, I think they struggled on defense last year. I think they were 20th in overall defense, EPA per play. Their corners aren't the best. They got Adoree Jackson. He's okay. They don't got real depth at corner. Their linebackers need some work. I know they added Bobby Okereke. But, he's only one guy, and he's kind of overrated in my opinion. I don't know exactly what they paid for him, but their defensive line is absolutely stacked. It's going to help them a lot. Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, Ojulari. They're going to be sending all kinds of different dudes after people, and that's going to be where their strength is. Last year, their strength of schedule wasn't that strong. They had a lot of breaks. Daniel Jones balled out down the stretch, which really compelled them to get into the playoffs. So if Daniel Jones plays the best of his ability and gets what they, out of what they paid for him, the $40 million a year they paid for him, and Barkley has some semblance of a more career year, I can see this team being about as competitive or a little bit more competitive as they were last year, maybe snagging 10-7 if the Cowboys and the Eagles regress a little bit. But for me, their floor is going to be 7-10 in a really competitive division. Giants at 17. Number 16, the Cleveland Browns. Now, I'm more middle of the pack on the Cleveland Browns than a lot of the pundits are. Every single year, everyone's like, the Cleveland Browns, they're going to be the fucking Super Bowl cocksucker, Joe Rogan. The Cleveland Browns, I'm going to bet the house on them. No, I think they could have the potential to be really, really competitive, really good team. But I don't see them being a team that makes a run in the playoffs, even if they can make it there. There's a lot of unknowns in this team, especially at quarterback, and that's why Deshaun Watson's the X factor. Their strength, defense, overall defense, they're stacked. The linebacker, D-line, defensive back, it could possibly be the best defense in the league if everything pans out and they're all healthy. Best offense, or the weakness is depth at wide receiver. They got Amari Cooper, but outside of that, and they got David Njoku, but David Njoku's okay. Best offensive player, Nick Chubb at running back. Best defensive player, Myles Garrett. Their X factor is Deshaun Watson because basically this team is built the best possible team they can build around him. And it's going to just depend on can he, after getting a season under his belt with growing pains, can he go back to being the guy he was? There's a lot of dudes that are haters and talk shit about Deshaun Watson as a player. I can care less what people think about him as a man. I mean, he's a freak. But from the time that dude entered the league up until he had all this shit go on and he left the Texans, he was borderline a top 5 quarterback. And him and DeAndre Hopkins were taking a very average roster into the playoffs every year, being competitive with every team they played. If he can go back to being that guy with this football team, this could be a scary football team. But I'll put their floor at 7-10, and I'll put their ceiling at 10-7 in a good division, a tough division. But I lean more towards 7-10. Cleveland Browns 16. Seattle Seahawks, biggest strength, skill positions, biggest weakness, defensive line. Best offensive player, DK Metcalf at wide receiver. Best defensive player, Tariq Woolen at cornerback. The X factor is Geno Smith. Basically, Geno Smith is the X factor because it's going to come down to, can Geno Smith replicate what he did last year? If he can replicate what he did last year, this team has added some pieces offensively and defensively. And I think this team's going to be about as competitive as they were last year. If Geno Smith can play even better than he did last year, then this team's going to possibly be really good. And it's an interesting team because they're going out and they're following the blueprint. They're getting good at the positions that matter. No one would have expected Geno Smith to be this good, but he was the 4th best quarterback last year in pure grading metrics. He was really good last year, whether he was running the football or throwing the football. They're really good at wide receiver already, and then they added Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's really fucking good. He's going to be electric for them. I know he injured his wrist, but they say he's going to be back in like 3 more weeks. So you're going to have Metcalf and Lockett running all up and down the field, and then you're going to have Jackson Smith and Jigba catching balls underneath. If Geno can just keep it together again and build upon the last season, this team offensively is going to be good. They can run the football. They got their future left tackle in Charles Cross. Where this team worries me, though, is defensively. They were terrible pass rushing last year. And I know they added Bobby Wagner back, but he's getting old in the tooth. Their front seven's not good. They will be good on the back end. They're really deep in their secondary. Sorry, man. I don't know what's going on with me. I woke up this morning and I was like, fucking throat. Their floor is 8-9. Their ceiling could be 10-7 in a division where the 2 bottom teams are going to be absolute dog shit. So by proxy, with the talent that they do have on their team, if they can replicate what they did last year, they're going to be competitive. They'll probably push the 49ers a little bit, but I still don't think they're anywhere as close as good as the 49ers. That's arguably the best roster in the league. But I do like the direction the Seahawks are going in. They added another corner to the mix in Devin Witherspoon with a 5th overall pick, which find that interesting to me. There was 3 cornerbacks they could have taken there, and they took Witherspoon. They went with a more polished guy who's a dog, come up, make tackles. So he's going to go good in that cornerback room that's already pretty decent. You know, he's going to have to cover guys like Debo, Cooper Kupp, and other guys. So it's a no-brainer. Makes sense. Seattle at 15. So this one was hard, one of the harder ones for me to do. Detroit Lions, because I'm lukewarm on the Detroit Lions. Everyone's like beating their meat and is like, oh, Detroit and stuff. But there's a lot of things going on with Detroit that, you know, they're not world beaters to me, and they're not where they need to be yet to go on a serious playoff run. Their biggest strength is their O-line. Their O-line's fucking above average to elite across the board. Good. They're good to elite across the board, left tackle or right tackle. Their biggest weakness is their secondary, although their secondary is improving. It was actually better last year than it was for years prior, and they still added pieces to that secondary. And I like everything they've added defensively. They have who I think is going to be the defensive player of the year in Jack Campbell. I got to find my notes, man. Their secondary still needs time to gel. They got rid of Jeffrey Okudah, who happened to actually play not bad with Atlanta last year. So I don't know if that's scheme or, you know, experience, getting a little bit older. Okudah's still only 23. But they added Brian Branch, who's a really good player out of Alabama. He can play safety, he can play nickel corner, and come up and play the run. They added Emmanuel Mosley, who's an underrated draft prospect at corner. One of the X factors, they added C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Couple that with Tracy Jackson and Kirby Joseph. I think the team has the potential to have a better secondary, but it's definitely their weakness right now, until further notice. The best offensive player is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's really good. Best defensive player is Aiden Hutchinson, who, if he builds off last year, has the potential to be one of the better defensive ends in the league. Like I said, the X factor is going to be C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Adding him to that defense is going to help them a lot. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown. I say Amon-Ra St. Brown because he's had back-to-back really good years. For a dude who, and I seen an interview with him where he knows he can recite all like 15 or 16 wide receivers that got picked ahead of him. And he's really good. He's a little bit limited compared to some of the other dudes that are really good right now in terms of the athlete. He doesn't have the elite downfield speed and measurables. But he's one of the crispiest route runners in the league, catches absolutely everything. He's a monster after the catch, and just he's an absolute animal. Love the player. Can he have a breakout year? Last year I think he had like 1,200 yards, 100-something catches, but can he take it to that next step? Can he be that, like, can he be a top 5 guy? In this team who had a better offense than defense last year, if he can break out and be one of the premier wide receivers in the league, it's really going to help this team. It's really going to help Jared Goff, who had a really good year last year. Floor for this team is 7-10, or 7-10. The ceiling's 10-7. But I don't like them to overthrow the team that I have at number 1 in this division. I definitely think there's still going to be growing pains defensively. And I definitely think they don't have enough offensively for the offense to be a top-tier offense, as good as their offensive line is. I have Detroit at 14. Competitive number 14. At number 13, the team that I think is going to win the division again, the Minnesota Vikings. Their biggest strength is their passing attack. Biggest weakness is cornerback, even though they've addressed it a little bit by adding Byron Murphy Jr., who in my opinion is the best defensive player. And the reason why I have Byron Murphy Jr. as the best defensive player, could have gone with a couple other guys, but he's shown year after year that he's been consistently a really good corner in this league, and he's healthy. A lot of the other defenders for Minnesota, they're just fucking banged up all the time, not available. So I have Byron Murphy Jr. Obviously, the best player on this whole entire team is Justin Jefferson. Absolute freak, best wide receiver in the league. X factor will be Jordan Addison, who's played well in the preseason, was a good prospect in college. All they need for Jordan Addison to do is come in and at least be a good number 2. Can he be the Batman to Justin Jefferson's Robin? Addison's a guy who's a decent route runner, catches everything. For a small guy, he's better at the point of attack, going up and playing the ball, contested catches that people think. And he's pretty shifty. Defensively, I do like what this team has done defensively in the offseason. I actually think this team has the potential to be better than it was last year on defense. And if you look at their depth chart, their defensive line, Dean Lowry, Khyiris Tonga, Harrison Phillips, Danielle Hunter, and Marcus Davenport coming off the edge. If Hunter and Davenport stay healthy, that's a really good tandem. They have Jordan Hicks, who's an underrated middle linebacker in terms of run defense, not the best in pass coverage. But then one of my favorite young players in the league, Brian Asamoah II, is going to get a full go as their Mike linebacker. I like Harrison Smith still at his age. He's still really good. Cameron Bynum's underrated. Rookie Mekhi Blackman's going to be good for them. And then they got Byron Murphy Jr. I actually think this team's going to be better this year than people think. I do think the division as a whole took a step forward, and everyone got a little bit better. So I don't see this team going 14-3. Just like how the Giants had a lot of breaks, right, and played a bad schedule and got into the playoffs and happened to beat this team had a lot of bad breaks and good breaks and overachieved in the regular season as a regular season juggernaut, and then got a matchup that they couldn't handle in, the slow and steady conservative style pace, coupled with Kirk Cousins having to play fucking better in the playoffs. Love Kirk Cousins. Got to play better in the playoffs, man. Is he going to do it 35 years old? I don't fucking know. Their ceiling is 11-6, but I do think they take the division. This is going to be a fun team to watch. Number 12, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The biggest strength is their front seven. Their biggest weakness is cornerbacks. And I think that's what holds this team back defensively at times, is they are not good at corner. I don't even know if I can fucking name a corner on their team. Let's see what their depth chart says. Yeah, they're starting Levi Wallace and Patrick Peterson and Chandon Sullivan. Yeah, that's It's not looking good for Pittsburgh. That's why we keep beating them lately. Their front seven is absolute. They're all dogs on the front seven. Their middle linebackers, their edge rushers, their defensive linemen. Cam Jordan in the middle, T.J. Watt on the edge. Best offensive player, in my opinion, last year, and based off projection, is going to be George Pickens. Best defensive player is T.J. Watt, obviously. X factor is going to be Kenny Pickett. I thought Kenny Pickett played really well last year behind a bad offensive line, but they've also bolstered that offensive line up a little bit, adding new pieces to it. They got a running back who, in my opinion, is overrated but still solid enough to fit what they do. This team's probably going to pass the ball a little bit more this year with the weaponry they got on the edges. I think this team's going to be super fucking competitive this year, just like they were last year. Floor for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 8-9. Ceiling in a tough division, 10-7. Number 11, the Miami Dolphins. The biggest strength are their playmakers. Biggest weakness is their offensive line. And a lot of that is health. Their interior offensive line has a lot of good young players, but it just hasn't all gelled and come to fruition. Best offensive player is Tyreek Hill. Best defensive player is Jalen Ramsey, although I'm pretty sure he's hurt for most of the year. The X factor for this team is 100% Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback. In terms of pure grade, Tua is one of the better quarterbacks in the whole entire league. When he's upright, big question is, can he fucking take hits and stay upright? Can the offensive line protect him? This team could be really, really good on both sides of the football if these dudes stay healthy. If Tua can stay upright, this team's going to be in the mix and could potentially go on a playoff run. The floor for this team is 7-10. The ceiling for this team is 11-6. The 7-10 is and the spread is predicated on if Tua stays healthy or not. For a while here, I liked this team to win the division, but now with their recent injuries and the fact that Tua is a stiff breeze from freaking getting knocked out and sent to the Shadow Realm, I do like Miami a lot. I think they have the potential to be a playoff team, but floor is 7-10, ceiling's 11-6. Miami Dolphins, number 11. Number 10, the Los Angeles Chargers. So this team, to me, is one of the enigmas of the league. It's like you just don't know what you're going to get with this team throughout their history. Like even when they had some of the best teams I've seen growing up, back in the Phillip Rivers and LaDainian Tomlinson days, they had top 10 defense, all these weapons, LT, Phillip Rivers, good offensive line, still couldn't fucking get it done. Phillip Rivers choking in the fucking playoffs and shit. Their defense collapsed in the playoffs. Just wondering now, this is one of the most talented teams they've had in a little bit. I'm just wondering if they get over the hump, and I'm wondering if it's coaching. I thought about putting coaching as their biggest weakness, but, their linebackers are pretty dog shit. Biggest strength, playmakers. They got playmakers all over the place, whether it's the quarterback, the running back position, the wide receiver position. They're 4 deep at wide receiver. The biggest weakness is linebacker. The linebackers have not been good for a while. Best offensive player is obviously Justin Herbert. The best defensive player is Derwin James. The X factor is going to be Justin Herbert. He's shown the first 3 seasons he's been in the league that he's absolutely fantastic, uber talented, can make every throw, howitzer for an arm, athleticism upside, just a smart player, leader. I think right now with this current regime, with this current team, and this coaching staff, it's kind of going to be on him to take that step up to the plate, and he's going to have his best year this year. They just paid him a lot of money, so he ain't fucking going nowhere. I personally think that this team is probably going to be around the 10-win mark, and they're probably not going to do well in the playoffs, and I think that Brandon Staley's going to be out of here. And there's going to be fucking coaches lining up to take this job. California, it's beautiful over there. Loaded fucking roster on both sides of the football. And the biggest thing with this team is when you think about how loaded this team is, it's a lot of it's health. Their offensive line was banged up last year. They have their core defensive players are always hurt. J.C. Jackson, Joey Bosa. Even Derwin James at times has been injured a lot. Dudes on the PFF podcast don't even call him by his name. They just call him number 3. It's pretty funny because they're scared to say his name in case he get hurt. But I think this team has the potential to be really good, but I also think they have the potential to be about as good as they were last year. Los Angeles Chargers at 10. Number 9, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Jacksonville Jaguars are an interesting team to me because clearly down the stretch, this team was 100% willed by somewhere along the line in the middle of the season, it all clicked for Trevor Lawrence. And he immediately went from being, yeah, he's good, he's a young player, like, can he live up to the hype? To the back half of the season, he was fucking lights out in all facets of playing football. The kid's just a beast. Biggest strength are their playmakers. They got playmakers out of the backfield. They got Everett Ingram at tight end. They're deep at wide receiver with Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, and Calvin Ridley. Their biggest weakness is their offensive line. I still think their offensive line is not good, and it hinders them. Lawrence is under pressure a lot and has to make a lot of off-kilter and pressured throws. Best offensive player is Trevor Lawrence. Best defensive players are Tyson Campbell and Josh Allen. I think they're pretty damn close. X factor is going to be Calvin Ridley. Can Calvin Ridley come back at 20 years old, missing a year, and be the player that he was? If he could do that, then this team's offense is going to be absolutely explosive between the guys that they already have, and then adding him, they bring almost everyone back. I'm excited to watch this football team. In a bad division, their floor is going to be 9-8. Ceiling could be 11-6. I wouldn't be surprised if they go 11-5, but I do think the defense, they're not strong enough in certain positions on defense for this team to be holistically very competitive. I do like the fact that their defense is really young and long and athletic, but, their interior defensive line's really not all that great. A lot of their players are young. They don't have a lot of depth at corner. This team needs to add more talent, need more time to gel. It's one of the youngest defenses in the league. Do love their young linebacker, though, and Lloyd. But yeah, I think this team storms and just destroys and takes this division, and I think they'll be in the playoffs. I think they'll be competitive. Great coaching. Doug Peterson, great quarterback. They're building something over here in Jacksonville. Jacksonville, number 9. Number 8, the New York Jets. Biggest strength is their defense. Front seven's really, really gnarly, led by Quinnen Williams and C.J. Mosley. They got depth with a lot of young guys at pass rusher. They're 3-4 deep at corner, led by Ahmad Sauce Gardner. They got good safeties. Biggest weakness is their offensive line. I don't really care what anyone says. Their offensive line wasn't good last year. It's not going to be that good this year. Mekhi Becton is like 1 calorie away every snap from friggin' blowing out his kneecap. And that's where this team could struggle. I can see Aaron Rodgers getting sacked a lot. But luckily for them, Aaron Rodgers, regardless of his situation, has always been one of the best quarterbacks to ever play. Best offensive player, Aaron Rodgers. Best defensive player, Ahmad Sauce Gardner, who I thought should have been Defensive Player of the Year last year. Corner is one of the hardest positions to play in the league. I expect him to just be fucking lights out like he was as a rookie. Their X factor is Garrett Wilson. I really believe Garrett Wilson's the fucking truth. I think Garrett Wilson's going to build upon the year he had last year with nobody's throwing him the football. Now he's got Aaron Rodgers going to be fucking slinging the pill. They look like they already have that Rodgers-esque. Oh, God, I forget his name. God damn it. Jordy Nelson, they got that like connection where Rodgers used to be so good at connecting off all the stem routes, option routes, back shoulder fade. They're going to have that. They're going to have that connection. I do think they lack a little bit of depth at the wide receiver position. I know Rodgers brought all his boys in, but basically what they're doing is they're piecemealing a wide receiver core that all together just complements Garrett Wilson breaking out truly as a number 1. In a good division, this team could. I think their floor is they're still going to be really good, 10-7. But I think their ceiling, if everything breaks right for them and they get enough protection, I think this team could go 12-5. They're a really good football team. They added, more depth at running back with Dalvin Cook, which is good for Breece Hall because it's going to give him more. They're not going to have to put the full load on Breece Hall as he comes back from his injury. Breece Hall was fantastic last year. This season, be good on defense. They're going to be able to run the ball at you. They're going to be able to catch the ball in the backfield. Aaron Rodgers is going to be fucking flaking and perpetrating on everyone. This team has potential to be really good. But I got to see it. Jets at number 8. Number 7, Baltimore Ravens. Biggest strength, quarterback playmaker. Biggest weakness are the playmakers. All they've added to the playmakers. I'll get to that in a little bit. In my opinion, this team has done a disservice to Lamar Jackson in terms of building around him. Lamar Jackson's won 80% of his games. He's a better, It drives me nuts. Like, dude, Lamar Jackson is actually a good thrower of the football. And he's been a real good thrower of the football with not a lot of talent to throw the fucking football to. Yeah, obviously he has the factor of using his legs, but the kid boasts a career 64% completion percentage. And that's with not having good playmakers on his team. Outside of his tight end Andrews, who's injured all the fucking time, name another really good dude that he's had to throw the football to. I'll wait. Yeah, he had Steve Smith, but he had Steve Smith who'd been in the league for like 15 years. They have not built, in my opinion, good pass protecting offensive lines around him. They have not given him enough weapons to succeed. Then they've just leaned on the fact that they've built good teams that could run the football behind his ability to run. The kid's an underrated thrower. He averages almost 8 yards per attempt and almost 64% with bad offensive weapons. If your quarterback could get to almost 65% with bad playmakers, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think I don't know why, dude. I know so many people personally that fucking act like Lamar Jackson ain't shit. It is a bad player until he's throwing the ball all over you and gouging you and running down the field. The dude's like a fucking one-man team. I'll defend Lamar Jackson until his wheels come off or until he's too old to play. The dude's really fucking good. And it still bothers me that Atlanta never made a play for him because that would immediately made Atlanta a playoff contender. Biggest weakness for playmakers. Best offensive player, Lamar Jackson. Best defensive player, Roquan Smith. Already added to a solid defense. I will say their defenses at times, although they're solid in big games, their defenses give up a lot of fucking points. Maybe Roquan this year could spell that. He played well for them last year. The X factor is going to be Zay Jones. I like Zay Jones a lot. Really shifty, really good route runner. To me personally, I would have liked to. I kind of like them to see a guy, that has a little bit more measurables. But this league's moving towards, get guys in space, gadget players, and Zay Flowers, has that in spades. Really good short to intermediate route runner. Has the speed to take the top off the defense. When he gets the ball in his hands with enough space, he's really good. He's really underrated after the catch. Really good, makes dudes miss. So if he could come in and actually be the number one guy on the edge, opposite of Bateman, who Bateman's just injured every year and blames everyone else. I think this team could be really, really good and battle the Bengals for this division and possibly win the division if everything clicks out for them. Their floor is 9-8 because the division is so tough, but their ceiling to me is 12-5. I think this is going to be a really good football team, health considering. Baltimore Ravens at 7. Number 6, the Dallas Cowboys. Biggest strength is their overall defense. I think their defense has the potential to be the best defense in the league this year. Their biggest weakness, in my opinion, is their coaching. John McCarthy's like, yeah, we're going to go out here and run the football when, their main running back is banged up and they don't have depth at running back. Unknowns with their backup. I like Deuce Vaughn, but unknowns with their backups at running back. This team has, underrated pass-catching tight ends. They're deep at wide receiver. They have a quarterback that normally, unlike last year, was an anomaly, throws darts, doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. With this defense and this offense, this team should be back in the mix and should be going after the NFC Championship. I hope that fucking McCarthy doesn't fuck this away. And if McCarthy can't get this done with this roster, then he should be immediately fired. I don't care what anyone says. I think that dude should have been fired a few years ago. They let Kellen Moore go, who at times has driven me nuts a couple times with his play calls, but what do I know? I'm not an offensive coordinator. But I do know that since he's been there, they've been one of the best offenses in the whole entire league. And then they let that guy go, and McCarthy's going to play. McCarthy's going to, make the coaching calls where they're just going to line up a power eye with little running backs and shit. I don't fucking know. So there's a part of me that's worried about this team. That's why I put their floor at 9-8. Their best offensive player is CeeDee Lamb. Their best defensive player is Micah Parsons. Their X factor is Dak Prescott. Can Dak Prescott bounce back and be the player that he normally is. A very efficient player with rushing upside. I'd like to see them get back to him running the ball a little bit more. I don't know if they're scared because he hurt his ankle a few years ago, but this team is one of the best rosters in the league. I think they're going to be really, really competitive. And I do like the gentleman on the screen. Hopefully, they give him a heavier target share, like they should, so he can prove that he's one of the best wide receivers in the league. He already is, but I think they need to expand his role out and let him attack dudes one-on-one more. CeeDee Lamb's absolutely dynamic, route running after the catch. He's a monster. Love the first down celebration, too. Cowboys are number 6, but we'll see. They have a habit the past 10 years of getting in the playoffs and not doing shit. So, the Buffalo Bills at number 5. Biggest strength is their defense. Biggest weakness is their offensive line. Best offensive player, obviously, is Josh Allen. The best defensive player is Tre'Davious White, who's healthy again. The X factor is going to be for this team James Cook at running back and Dalton Kincaid at tight end. This team actually was in the upper half of rushing teams last year, even though there's this like idea with the brass and people that hate the Buffalo Bills that they can't run the football and that's their problem. That's not their problem. They're one of the more efficient rushing teams. They just like to throw the ball more, and a lot of their rushing comes from their playmaker quarterback. But that being said, James Cook is an X factor because he's a very talented running back, and they're going to need to utilize him a little bit more, especially in the pass game, and he's got to step up and be that number one guy. Last year they, did running back by committee. They brought in Damian Williams, which is going to help spell Cook. They're still going to have a little bit of committee back there with some of the players they got, but James Cook has to show that he is a dynamic piece for them in order for this offense to be truly as efficient as it can be. And then on top of that, when they drafted Dalton Kincaid, they must have looked at the board and thought, okay, well, Kincaid is not the traditional inline tight end. He's more of like a Kelsey mold. You line him up outside, you line him up in the slot, and he's more of just a really big, really athletic wide receiver. I think Dalton Kincaid has the ability and the skill set, the attributes to be really, really good right away for this team. You can line him up all over the field. He's a mismatch nightmare. Can run, catch over dudes. I think he's a really good addition to this team. So that's why I have them both as their X factors, because they're going to need these two dudes to contribute immediately for this offense to stay one of the better offenses in the league. But first and foremost, Josh Allen's going to have to go back to the 2 years he had privy to this last year. He's got to be more efficient. His accuracy has dipped a little bit the last season. Made some boneheaded plays. He turns the ball over a lot. Now, we've seen quarterbacks in the past turn the ball over a fuck ton and still be really, really good. You'd be surprised how many of the greatest quarterbacks of all time turn the ball over. Like Brett Favre, was a Super Bowl champion, and he turned the ball over just as much as anybody else or any two quarterbacks. I'd lie if I'd say it doesn't hinder the offense that he turns the ball over that much, but I also think that even with it hindering the offense, it's still one of the best offenses in the league. They're going to need some of the wide receivers on the depth chart to step up and stay injury-free. But I do think with this defense, with the juggernaut that they have at quarterback and some of the young additions, they bolstered their offensive line a little bit. I think this team's still going to be right in the mix. I think this team's still going to probably win the division. And in a good division, I have their floor at 10-7. They're ceiling at 12-5. I'm not one of these dudes that thinks they're going to go. I hear Bills fans saying they're going 14-3 and 15-2. That's not happening because this team is starting to get older in spots, and they definitely don't have depth at certain positions, but it's still one of the best teams in the whole entire league. So, Buffalo Bills at 5. Number 4, the Cincinnati Bengals. Their biggest strength is their overall offense. Biggest weakness is safety, which is not really, to me, that big of a weakness. It's just, they lost an elite player and a really good player at those positions. They're going to be starting some young guys. Brought in their veteran Nick Scott, who played really well for the Rams 2 years ago against them in the Super Bowl. Best offensive players, Joe Burrow. Best defensive players are DJ Reader and Trey Hendrickson. I think they're pretty even. Their X factor is bringing in Orlando Brown Jr. at left tackle, who's been a really good left tackle in this league for 6 years. A lot of people are like, oh, well, he's played for 2 different teams already. He was really good with the Ravens, didn't want to play right tackle when they got Ronnie Stanley Jr. Of course the Chiefs see that and go, oh, let's go get an elite left tackle. They went over, made the trade, plugged him in at left tackle, and he was a Pro Bowl player for them and one of the reasons why the team was really, really good these past 2 years. Now, at only 27 years old, he hits the free agent wire and gets signed to what I think is a very bargain-friendly deal for my Cincinnati Bengals. So that's immediately going to bolster an offensive line that's, when healthy, is going to be way better than it has been the past 2 years. The starting offensive line, Orlando Brown Jr., Cordell Volson, Ted Garris, who's a Pro Bowler, Alex Kappa, Pro Bowler, Jonah Williams can kick the right tackle, and then they have in the wings La'el Collins, who when he's upright is one of the best right tackles in the league. He's just got to stay upright. So he's coming off the bench. So I like the improvement to the offensive line. I think we're really deep at corner. I think we have one of the better front sevens in the league. You could make an argument we have the best group of skill position players in the league if you even look at the young guys we brought in. Basically, what's going to hinge is if can Joe Burrow stay upright. He's dealt with nagging injuries so far his whole career. Was injured half of his rookie year. But I expect this team to win the division. I expect them to be ultra competitive on both sides of the football. Floor 10-7, ceiling 14-3. And Houday Nation, hopefully this team gets after it. Really, really excited about this football team. I do think that this is the last year where they're going to have this much talent on both sides of the ball, because then you got to start doing what the Chiefs have done, which the Chiefs have done successfully. You're going to have to start shuffling players more, because they're going to pay Joe Burrow, they're going to pay T. Higgins, they're going to pay Jamar Chase down the line. So they're going to have to do the whole reshuffle your team a little more fairly often because you pay the high-powered positions. Chiefs are doing it and winning. I do like Duke Tobin, love the coaching staff, and I think that they are showing that they know how to keep restructuring and rebuilding teams, because obviously they've built a team that's gone to Super Bowl, contends for the AFC Championship so far every year. And I just love the direction of where the team's going. Hopefully they can get at least one Super Bowl, but the NFL's a fickle bitch. Cincinnati at 4. San Francisco 49ers at 3, biggest strength overall roster in their offensive system. They have one of the best offensive systems in the league with one of the best offensive minds in the league. Not only are they stacked at absolutely every position on offense, almost, the offense is designed to put all those players in positions to succeed, really deep and layered route running concepts. Just love what they do. It just seems that they could take any player and get them open in the system. The running scheme's really good with Trent Williams at left tackle. The biggest weakness is quarterback play, and I don't really think that it's proven to be that much of a weakness. It's just that this team is so good as a full roster. Basically, what's going to happen is, just like last year, how well this team plays in the playoffs is going to come down to how well their quarterback plays, because everyone else is going to play good on this team. Best offensive player, Trent Williams, left tackle. To me, you can make an argument he's a top 5 left tackle of all time. And even in his 30s, he's still just fucking destroying everyone. Best defensive players are Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. The X factor is Brock Purdy. We've seen the 49ers over the past 15 years, build really good rosters, but have average quarterback play. They did it with Colin Kaepernick. Got to the playoffs and they just weren't good enough. Kaepernick was not good in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl for them to win. They did the same thing with fucking Jimmy Garoppolo. They had an average quarterback. Wasn't good enough in the Super Bowl to win it when they were knocking on the fucking door and he missed a wide open wide receiver in the end zone for a touchdown. Now they're rolling out here with Brock Purdy, who showed promise, a very accurate quarterback, anticipatory thrower. Not the best arm, but he's got a little wheels to him too, and he's a leader. Did a really good job in the games he played and leading this offense and playing within the system. The floor for this team, in my opinion, even with as good as the roster is, could be 9-8. If they don't get good enough quarterback play or Brock Purdy goes down, they will probably, just look as average as a lot of other teams do without a really good quarterback. You got to remember, they went into that playoff game with the Eagles didn't have a quarterback, and they got absolutely fucking demolished. And you can make an argument that this team is just as good, if not better, roster-wise, than the Eagles. But if Brock Purdy plays really, really well, this team can easily be a 14-3 team. They got depth at wide receiver. They got playmakers at running back. Their fucking defense is absolutely stacked. I would be shocked if the 49ers were bad this year. So I got the 49ers at 3. Philadelphia Eagles sitting here at number 2. Biggest strength, offensive line. They have the best offensive line in the league. Biggest weakness, in my opinion, is linebacker. Best offensive player right now is Jalen Hurts. Best defensive player is Darius Slayton. The X factor is Jalen Hurts, and I say this because last year Jalen Hurts was without a doubt their best offensive player. You can make the argument he was the best player of the Super Bowl. They lost their offensive coordinator. They lost their defensive coordinator. Some of the players are getting older, a little more long in the tooth, but I expect them offensively to still be really, really good. Rarely do great offensive linemen, no matter what age they are, just have a steep fucking just fall off a cliff unless they're dealing with an injury. I expect this team to be really good offensively. The X factor is Jalen Hurts. He had 2 subpar years, then he had a really good breakout year. Threw 22 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. He ran for around 10 touchdowns. Was just dynamic in the run game behind one of the best offensive lines in recent years, in my opinion. Can he do it again? The mark of you being truly great, that's why he wasn't S tier for me in my quarterback rankings. The mark of truly being great is playing to the best of your ability consistently every single year. That's what separates the great guys from the good guys. Can they play great in the conditions? Can they play great no matter what the matchup is? Can they put you in position to succeed consistently? Jalen Hurts has already blown the top off what his projection was as a college player. He had so many deficiencies as a college player. But sometimes if you go to the right team, right coaching staff, and you're willing to put in the work, you can improve drastically at any position. And I'm a firm believer that all the dudes that were banging the table for Jalen Hurts, like a lot of these dudes that love college football, they bang the table for certain players because they love them, just like Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow didn't show any semblance of this dude's an elite pocket passing, fucking throwing darts quarterback every down on fucking NFL Sundays. Did he have some success? Did he win a playoff game with a really good roster? Sure. But when you break down quarterbacks, in my opinion, Jalen Hurts' college tape wasn't indicative of a dude who was going to be really good in the NFL. But he's proven me wrong. I admit when I'm wrong. Jalen Hurts is a fucking dog. I would love to see him keep replicating it. Really rooting for him. Floor for this team, 10-7. Ceiling for this team, 14-3, maybe 15-2. This team's fucking stacked. I'm not even going to go into how stacked this team is. Not only are their defenders getting old, but they've done such a good job with all their draft capital, shoring up their backups. They got backup defensive linemen. They got backup linebackers. They got backup defensive backs, guys that they're building up. If Jalen Hurts can stay a borderline MVP caliber player and they can obtain all these players and keep knowing how to rotate certain positions and knowing when to let guys go. They did the smart thing letting Miles Sanders walk because 5 different guys rushed for 4 yards a carry behind this offensive line last year. You don't got to pay that man. This franchise knows what they're doing right now. But everyone knows that still you could do all that and still not win championships. Philadelphia Eagles, number 2. Number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Kansas City Chiefs are hilarious to me because they've taken the concept that I've been saying for a while now in my philosophy in building teams, and they're taking it to a degree that I never thought a team could take it. I've always said, get your quarterback, get your coach, protect your quarterback, and you will win a lot of fucking football games in this league. Biggest strengths for Kansas City, quarterback, playmaker, their offensive line, and their coach. Those are the strengths of this football team. You can make an argument this team as a roster you can make an argument it's not even it's not a top 5 roster. I could possibly find maybe even 3 more teams outside the top 5 that have better top to bottom rosters than this team, but they are so good at the offensive line. They are so good at quarterback. They're so good at coach. And Travis Kelce is so good of a pass catching threat that this team continuously at least goes to the AFC Championship every single year. They have 2 Super Bowls. They won the Super Bowl last year and started 7 fucking rookies. They were a middle of a pack defense last year, and that's what I put as their biggest weakness because their defensive personnel, in my opinion, is not that great. But their best offensive player is Patrick Mahomes. The best defensive player is Chris Jones. Who knows if he'll even be there? And I don't even think they're scared to move off him. Now, I will say, you can't play no defense. Haven't been a proponent of you got to play just good enough defense? Yes, you can't be abysmal. I do worry if they lose Chris Jones and some other pieces. If they lose Chris Jones or have to trade him or let him go, and on top of that, if they have some injuries and stuff, they could be so bad defensively that they have no choice but to be in shootouts with everyone, which they could still win. X Factor is Patrick Mahomes. He's that fucking good. In my opinion, in terms of a playmaker and an overall skill and quarterback, I think, and personally, he's the best quarterback. Probably him and Aaron Rodgers are the best pure skilled quarterbacks I've seen in my time. There's a huge possibility he can go down as the best and greatest quarterback of all time. I think he's only like 26 years old. He's already got 2 Super Bowls. Tom didn't win a bulk of his Super Bowls until he was post 30. This team has perfected the art of paying your quarterback, getting your coach, building your offensive line, and then building accordingly. And doing it over and over again. They're going to keep rotating players around this offensive line, this quarterback, and this coach. Floor for this team in a good division is 11-7. The ceiling is 14-3. I do think this team goes back at least to the AFC Championship and vies for a shot to go to the Super Bowl. And I think with this quarterback, this offensive line, and this coach who's just a genius, that this team, as long as they have these things in place, will be always a threat and competitive to go to the Super Bowl. And those are my NFL power rankings. I hope you guys enjoyed them. Please let me know what you guys think. And instead of doing them every single week, I'm going to do them quarterly. So there will be less of them, but I think that makes for, a little more nuance because I could talk a little more in depth about the things that have happened over weeks instead of meandering on every single week about, every little thing. I'm really excited for the NFL season. Obviously, y'all know I'll be rooting for my fucking Bengals. Love those boys. Been a diehard since I was 12. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be posting this in a little bit. Right after this, I will be live with Starfield. If anyone wants to watch some Starfield, I'll be live, stream the shit out of that. I appreciate the support from the people that actually do listen to the podcast and do like my content. I love all you guys. I'll holla at you.